Hey there, I'm Shannon and I'm an event coordinator and planner located in Jacksonville, Florida. I wanted to create a YouTube series because I know that there's a lot of confusion over where to start your wedding planning. One thing that my brides really struggle with is the starting process. Where do you start, right? There's so many different tips on, do you start with budget? Do you start by picking a date? Do you start by talking about your vision? Do you get a planner? Who knows, right? I wanted to start by giving you the top 3 things you should know when starting your wedding planning journey. So the first thing that you want to make sure that you do whenever you start planning your wedding is decide what your top 3 most important things are. So do you care a lot about the food at your wedding? Do you care more if people are doing exciting, fun events? Do you care if your friends have to travel far? Do you care if the music's really good? You have to decide what 3 are the most important, and that's something that you and your spouse can figure out. Once you've figured out the top 3 most important things that you want and that matter to you and your spouse or your future spouse to be for your wedding is going to be to figure out a timeline. Yes, that means figuring out what your date's gonna be, because obviously you need to figure that out too. But if you've got a year and a half to plan your wedding, well, you can book 1 vendor a month and still have plenty of time to get everything booked way before. Or if your timeline's more like 6 months to a year, you know, it's gonna be a little bit tighter, but you can totally do it. And you'll just wanna book some of those more important vendors to you a little bit earlier on. The third most important thing that you want to do when figuring out your wedding planning process is the one that people like to talk about the least, and that's the budget, right? A lot of people say you should do your budget first, but I actually kind of disagree with that, because if you start your budget first and you have a certain plan, but you don't know your timeline or what's important to you, you're not going to really know where you're going to spend that money. When you're figuring out your budget, you want to make sure that you're figuring out how much money you're allotting to each thing that's important to you, and that will be affected by your timeline. Another really important part of your budget is going to be figuring out who is going to be spending money with you on your wedding. If you're involving both sides of the family and your grandparents and your uncles, guess who all is going to think they have a say in who they can invite to your wedding, or what kind of music is played at your wedding, or the type of food. And then before you know it, you're trying to just people please all day long, and no one wants to do that on their big day. So step number 1, you want to make sure that you figure out the 3 most important things to you and focus on those, and really don't forget them. Write them down somewhere safe. Step number 2, you're going to want to make sure you're figuring out your timeline and making sure that you know exactly how long you have, and then you have a better way of figuring out when you should be booking which vendors. And the third thing is you want to figure out your budget. So I actually have a 4th thing that I would recommend that you do for your wedding planning process in the beginning. And you're all probably gonna think I'm just trying to sell you something, but I'm not. My recommendation is that you hire a day of coordinator very early on in your wedding planning process. Yes, it's going to be extra money, and I get that. And no, I'm not trying to sell myself to you, because listen, I live in Jacksonville and a lot of you probably don't. But I would recommend doing a day of coordinator for a couple of different reasons. The first one is a lot of day of coordinators will give you a recommended vendors list, and a lot of them they've worked with before and they trust and they know are good. I remember feeling extremely overwhelmed by the amount of photographers in my area, and my coordinator had really good recommendations, and I wound up using most of her recommendations for my entire wedding. But the big thing they're gonna do is be an advocate for you and make sure that your wedding vision actually gets implemented. So you know how like Grandma Peggy's gonna be over there during the setup and she's gonna be trying to put doilies on the table that you didn't even want in the first place? It happens, okay? But I'd really recommend having a day of coordinator, because if I was your coordinator, I'd say, sorry, Grandma Peggy, I totally get it, but that's not what the bride asked for. In a really polite way, Grandma Peggy might be a little mad at it, but you don't have to say anything, because let's be honest, saying no to family can be really, really tough. So there you have it. That's my top 3, but really 4 things that I'd recommend that you do at the beginning of your wedding planning process. My goal as a coordinator is to make your life easier, so all of the videos that you see with me are not gonna be 15-minute long. They're going to be maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 6. Ooh. But I wanted to make sure that you got the information you needed succinctly and right to the point, so you don't have to just skip through the parts that are boring or you don't need already. Anyways, be on the lookout for more videos. Please like and subscribe to my page, and if you're interested, check out pinkdaisiesevents.com for all of your planning and coordinating needs. Have a great day.